Good morning to all of you. I hope that I am audible. You are very welcome to the series of certificate course on scientific writing. And today we are starting the fourth session, that is on developing a research proposal. So I'm warmly welcome our resource person, Professor Mettika Vittanage. She's a professor in the Faculty of Applied Sciences of University of Java. Professor Mettika, hope that you are here with us.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And thank you very much for accepting our kind invitation and also delivering this lecture today and tomorrow. And also that I want to mention a special thing about Professor Mettika. She's a CVCD awardee, and yesterday she was awarded with that particular special award, which from where she was selected out of the best scientist in the section of the science, applied sciences, and among all the universities. Congratulations, Professor Mettika, once again to you regarding this award. But this is only one award among many of awards what she was won earlier, and especially now she is the one she's the best researcher in the country, and when we are getting the ranking in considered from all over the country, all over the world. So again, with that small introduction, there I'd like to invite Ms. Engineer Mantika Naratne to give her tell her about a little bit and do the introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Good morning, everyone. I will introduce our resource person today, Professor Mettika Vittanage. Professor Mettika Vittanage is a full professor at the Office of Dean, Faculty of Applied Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardenepura. She has a BSc in National Resources from University of Sabaragamu, Sri Lanka, and an MSc in Environmental Sciences from University of Peradeniya, and a PhD in Hydrology from University of Copenhagen in Denmark. She is the founding director of the Ecosphere Resilience Research Center, University of Sri Jayawardenepura. She is a young affiliate of the Third World Academy of Sciences, and she became the chairperson of the Young Scientist Forum in 2017. She is the best scientist in the country, and she has contributed a number of science citation index journal articles and several book chapters and several co-edited books published by the Elsevier. So she is a recognized scientist in both national and international levels, and won many international grants also. Professor Vittanage was awarded as the best performing scientist for a few years at the National Institute of Fundamental Sciences. Currently, her field of interest include pollution monitoring and remediation in soil and water. So, dear Professor, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Professor Banduni Atapattu and Manti, for your kind introduction. And arranging this kind of a series of lectures on scientific writing, I think it is very important at this juncture because of the COVID pandemic, and also due to the economic crisis, the fuel crisis that we are facing. So this Zoom lecture series, I think those will be very important for whoever participating, students, the researchers, young academics who are participating to, to be aware regarding the scientific writing mainly. So actually, I think you are able to see my slides. So today, as a part of the lecture series that you are having, we will be discussing regarding how to write a research proposal. So when it comes to a research proposal writing, it can be two types. Mainly, one is to win a research grant. That means to get some financial supports from some institute to carry out your own research. And the other research proposals are for fellowships, which means like for your PhD, for your master's, for your undergrad. It's kind of an academic work. So in my case, I think right now I have won like more than 6 national grants, competitive national grants, and more than 5 competitive international grants. So all together, I have brought like more than 200 million rupees from both national and international grants to the institutes that I have worked for, especially starting from the National Institute of Fundamental Studies. And then afterwards, University of Sri Jayewardenepura. So those 2 places, I was able to bring this amount of money through winning competitive research grants. Other than that, when I inform you regarding the fellowship, proposals. So, there are many different types of fellowship proposals. Either can be for your postgraduate studies, or either can be for a fellowship where they give this, money for you to conduct research-related activities like dissemination of science or popularizing science. So those kind of things are also, getting grants. There are competitive and non-competitive fellowships for these kind of activities too. So here I am mentioning you few different types of scientific proposals. The very first one we are targeting today is the research grant proposals. And there can be travel grant proposals, especially in Sri Lanka. I'm sure now the travel grants are not available, but we had an opportunity to get travel grants from National Science Foundation. So National Science Foundation was the only scientific body which was giving travel grants for scientists in Sri Lanka to go abroad for various different activities, like even for conference participation, or for training, for fellowships, and many more. So these travel grants were given to both young and senior academics. And that was very helpful grant, which is again competitive kind of. They have a criteria, and that if that criteria is matched, then we can apply for the travel grant from the NSF. And then there are like primary or preliminary proposals. We call them as white papers. So these preliminary proposals are like concept papers. Like, you know, it's like 2-page proposal, and very broad in the sense of the research area that you are writing. So these preliminary proposals are being submitted and then evaluated. And if the preliminary proposal is sound enough, the authors are being, or the researchers are being called for writing the elaborated grant proposal. So that is how it works when it comes to a white paper or a preliminary proposal. And there are unsolicited proposals where, you know, you are particularly submitting that proposal to a sponsor, and there is no general call, but it's like pick and choose kind of. Solicited proposals are just like in the case of NRC, National Research Council, National Science Foundation, NSF. They have grant calls for specific programs. Like in some cases, NSF and NRC both have investigator-driven grant proposal calls. So that is a special program, specific program in those 2 institutes. So those are not very big grants, but like 5 million maximum or 3 million maximum, depends on time to time, you know, depending on their criteria. So investigator-driven grants are a specific program, or sometimes they have a specific theme, like agriculture or climate change. So these kind of particular themes are there, and then they call for solicited proposals. Okay, so these are some of the scientific proposals that we deal with most commonly during our, you know, academic work. Other than this, you have undergraduate or postgraduate proposals for your fellowship. So why do we really need to study scientific writing or even grant proposal writing? It is because of the interdisciplinary nature of science now we have. So as an example, I took this particular slide. So you can see the interdisciplinary nature of the research done at University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. From medicine to environmental science, computer science, chemistry, chemical engineering, and many more, material science and so on. So it's very diverse. Nowadays, research is very diverse and interdisciplinary. So various disciplines, multiple disciplines get together now to do research. And because of this multidisciplinary nature, sometimes it's very easy to publish your work, sometimes it's very easy to win proposal, research grant proposals too. So since we are in science, we need to work collaboratively with not only from people in our own field, but also from people in the other fields, so that this multidisciplinary nature can be built up. And specifically, international communities or international granting bodies, they like to fund multidisciplinary research and inclusive gender, especially gender inclusive research. So that if your grant proposal contains scientists from both genders, especially females, then there will be a consideration, especially if you are applying or if you are fighting, if you are competing with for a grant in an international grant, right? So those are some of the key features you have to think when you are putting up a grant proposal. So let's discuss one by one later. And then again, nowadays, most of the institutes, even most of the researchers, they are worrying about the ranking. So ranking is important for you to think about the quality of the work that you do. If you don't think about the quality of the work, or if you don't have quality publications, then you might think, okay, that's not that important. But if you go into the international contest, you can clearly see how important the international recognition for a researcher. So that is why the ranking is very important. So not only institutional rankings, but also there are rankings for individual scientists too, like H-index or citations and so on. So likewise, you have rankings for institutes too. So institutional rankings basically depend upon the publications that you do, the quality publications that you do, and how many publications that are coming out of the institute, plus the scientific output. The scientific output, when you count scientific output, it's not only the publications, not only the number of publications or quality publications, but also the grants that you have received will be counted. So that is why we really need to improve the catching grants from both international and scientific bodies, especially at this kind of a juncture where we are facing a huge economic debt, economic crisis, where the attention or the focus of the authorities, especially the political willingness for research, is minute or lacking or limited. It's very important for the scientists to bring down grants from abroad to continue your own work, as well as to support the economy of the country. So that is again one more reason for us to think about competing with international grants so that we can support the students here, we can support the economy here, and it will be a support for, it will be for our own benefit too. So what is meant by a research proposal? Since today's focus is on research proposal writing, we need to understand what is a research proposal. So in a research proposal, we can call it as a statement of intent. Statement of what we are going to do. Right? And this particular statement of intent is academically prepared either to complete a research or to carry out a research. And the audience will be mainly the peers, supervisors, and examiners. Right? So a research proposal is a statement of intent where you academically prepare it either to complete the research, either to start a research, or either to work out your postgraduate work. So in a research proposal, you are giving your plan. You are demonstrating your plan that you have in your mind. Right? So especially a research proposal describes whatever you are planning in detail. Right? Your plan in detail. Right? A research proposal describes your plans, how to carry out this particular research in detail. And then it will give you some, it will show some decisions about your study. We can, as the peers or as the evaluators, we can take some decisions about your study and how quality is this particular study, whether this is novel or not, or it is repeating kind of a research and so on. Then later on, the approvals will be given by the institutional review board. Either it can be evaluators in a particular group or either it can be an institute. So as for all other things, there are various definitions given for research proposals. All these definitions are showing that this particular research proposal as in the sense of a research plan, right? As in the sense of a research plan. So this particular plan demonstrates the problem that you are facing or you are focusing on. And it will describe exactly how you are going to tackle this problem to give up a, give a solution to this particular problem. And then it will outline whether you have the capacity, your institute has the capacity to carry out this particular research, both in factually and instrumental wise, right? Both factual and instrumental wise, right? So this is what a research is. Some other definitions have shown that a research proposal is a document with essential features of a study that will be conducting in the future. So we are writing the research proposal to the future. So the study will be conducting in the future. When I say that future, you must think about the tense that you should write the research proposal. So the methodology specifically should be given in the future tense. All right. So research proposal shows the study which we are trying to conduct in the future, where we will do the activities in logical manner to make it successful. Right? So I have given two definitions for research proposals. These are not for you to memorize, but for you to understand the context or the background of the research proposal. As I described you earlier, there are two different types of research proposals mainly, right? Two different types. One is for acquiring, or one is for applying for grants. So these grants are for you to have money or have facilities for you to carry out research. And the other one is fellowships. So you can see the two, the difference between the grants and the fellowships here. So in terms of research proposal submission for grants, these grants are mainly submitted by an institution or on behalf of PI, right? By institution mainly, right? Most of the time. But yeah, in terms, PI is applying for a grant on behalf of the institution, right? That is why when you write a grant proposal, there is a series of signatures that you need to take. The very last signature is the institutional head. Why? Because this grant is being submitted by the institution, right, on behalf of the PI. So funds come to the institution, not to you, right? Not to the applicant. Funds come to the institution. Because funds are coming to the institution, the indirect costs can be applied, right? What are the indirect costs? Like the overhead costs, right? Those can be applied. And specifically, if you are applying for a grant, you need to submit a final report at the end of your grant. Right? You need to submit a final report at the end of the grant. And after you submitting the grant proposal, it will have a series of screening. The screening will be done by the granting institute. There will be like various different committees, and they will select the reviewers. So reviewers will go through your grant application, and then they will decide whether it to be granted or not. And the second one is fellowships. Right? So let me explain you in terms of NSF grants, National Science Foundation grants. Whatever we discussed in here is applicable 100%. But if you consider the grants given by the National Research Council, it is a bit different. In National Research Council, the grants are to the investigator. Grants are given to the investigator. So the grant money will not come to your institution. Right? Grant money will not come to your institution. But it will be separately deposited in a separate account under NRC, under National Research Council. So no matter the economic issues or whatever the issues that are coming from the country, NRC grants are not that much affected in terms of getting the installments properly. But in NSF, it's different. In NSF, sometimes you have a lag period where there is no money coming for you to carry out the research, because the money should be released by the Treasury. So if they don't get the money released by the Treasury, then they will be not giving you enough installments to carry out the grant. If you consider fellowships for a research proposal, it is submitted by an individual because it is for your own fellowship. So it is different from the grants, because in a grant, it is being submitted by the institution. And the fellowship comes for an individual, right? Individual is applying and the fellowship comes to the individual. No indirect cost, nothing is involved like overhead cost or surcharges or anything. And then no monitoring of expenditure. Most of the time, like, you don't need to give 6 month, like yearly progress, quarterly progress, you don't need to submit. But there may be some grants that you need to be, you need to submit the final report. Sometimes, not always. It's like 20% of fellowships may need may need the final report. Otherwise, most of the grants, most of the fellowships, they don't need final reports. Definitely, you may need letters of recommendations to apply for a fellowship. So what is the reason for you to write a research proposal as a scientist? Why proposals are needed? Otherwise, you can just go and, have an interview or have a viva or something and then ask for a proposal, ask for a grant. So why specifically a proposal is needed? The very first one is to deliver the ideas about the proposed study, right? If you are writing a proposal, you need to deliver the ideas about the proposed study. Otherwise, the evaluators would not understand what the proposal is for, right? And apply for funding. You can apply for funding if you have a good proposal. It will help to foresee the problems. That is very, very important. When you start writing a proposal, you may feel like, when you start reading and writing, then you will think, okay, these are the methodologies that are being followed to do this kind of a research. Then you will think whether, okay, do I have the access for these instruments to conduct this research? You need to foresee the problems, whether you have enough resources to conduct the research. If you don't have the resources, then maybe you can collaborate with somebody else, nationally or internationally, and get the support for your analysis so that you can foresee, you know, how much does it go, how much it is being, for the transport cost or for the chemical cost or the analytical cost. So these things you can foresee if you write the proposal prior to your grant. And then it will help you to understand the future of the research. If you have the proposal, you will be writing, you will be, thinking about the research question, and you will be writing the objectives, then methodology and so on. Then you might think, okay, what is the next step for this particular research? So you, based on the next step also, you can justify your research, right? So it will help you to understand the future of the research. So whether you have a huge problem to solve and you have done only a smaller part of it, so you can say that, okay, these are the broad picture of the particular research where I have successfully completed the first. So it will help you to understand the future of the research. And the justification shows the need of your research, how important your research is. If you don't express the importance of your research or justification for your proposed study, then the attention or the chances of winning will be very less. Okay. So you need to show the need for the research. So what are the essential ingredients of a research? You need to, it's important for you to understand that. There are 3 essential ingredients. The very first one is the issue. The issue means the problem that you are planning to address in your research, right? When it comes to problems, I normally discuss this in every scientific writing course. Is there a difference between a problem and a question? Can anybody in the audience give me an answer? Whether there is any difference between problem and a question? Anyone in the audience can give me an answer? Whether there is a difference between problem and question? So we have more than 380 participants. No one is answering. Yeah. Yoga Pratapan, you have raised the hand. Please answer. Okay, you are answering in the chat. Yes, problem, solution, answer. Okay. Yes. So many of you have an idea about the difference between the problem and a question. Basically, when you have a question, there is a ready-made answer given to that question, right? When you have a question, there is a ready-made answer built for that particular question. But for a problem, there is the solution, not an answer. So ready-made solutions are not there, right? So solution for a problem can be different from each other. The way that you are solving a problem will be different from me solving the same problem, right? So that is life. That is life. We don't get any questions during our lifetime, right? We don't get questions during our lifetime. We receive problems, right? We receive problems. So the solutions that each of us are finding are different from each other. And some fail to find solutions so that they get suicide, right? So that is the same thing here. So you can see science and life is a little bit similar, right? In science, in research, you are solving problems, right? You are not answering questions. You are answering questions maybe in your question paper, but not in research or not in your real life. So in research, it's always problems. So the issue is what the problem that you are focusing on. And then you will be discussing the research design, right? How do you tackle science to bring a solution for the particular problem that you are focusing on, right? So this particular research design should be according to the scientific method, right? So research design is to achieve the objective of your research, right? And the third one is the benefits, right? What will the research contribute to you, to the society, and to science, right? So that benefit, depending on the benefit, or based on this particular benefit, funders will think whether your project proposal is sound enough to be funded or not, right? So these three essential ingredients are very important for you to understand when you start writing a proposal. So a research proposal makes you, various different achievements or various different aspects of your character will be improved by writing a research proposal, right? So what are those? You will be creative, right? You will be creative. How are you going to be creative? Because you will be thinking about a research problem in the society or in particular field of science, and you will be creative enough to make it a story where there will be an interest of the funder to fund your proposal, right? And then you will be a person who can, let's say, who can argue on something, or you can stand on your own feet, right? Because you are justifying why this particular research is important, right? You are justifying. Without that justification, it's hard for you to win a research grant, right? And then you anticipate problems. When you carry out a research, there will be so many problems coming up. So that may not be related to a grant proposal. It may be related to your postgraduate or undergraduate proposal too. Whatever the scientific proposal that you are writing for research, you will need to anticipate for potential problems, right? So you will be thinking about the future of your project. So what kind of problems will come? Then if that problem comes, what are the alternative solutions that I can go through, right? So this anticipation is important for you to not only to write a proposal, but also for you to live your own life, right? Because in the life, you will anticipate problems and problems are coming up. Most of the time, the problems are not the anticipated problems, right? So because of all these things, you will anticipate a timeline to come up with the output of this particular proposed research, right? So time management also will be very important, and you will learn how to manage time, how to manage budget when you write a research proposal. Okay. So what makes a good proposal? Right? What makes a good proposal? The main thing is the idea, right? The main thing is the idea of the proposal, right? So if you have a very good idea or compelling idea or compelling project, that will be very important, and that will be very plus point for you to compete for a proposal, right? What do you mean by good idea for a proposal? That means the novelty of your proposal, novelty of your project. If you have a very novel or original idea, then that proposal will have a certain potential to win a grant. But it's not always the case. It's not always the case. Even though you have a very novel, highly novel and highly original, really original idea, that will not be considered by our granting bodies, national granting bodies, for you to grant the proposal, right? Because they have their own themes and they have their own priorities. So based on these priorities only, they will consider your proposal. So if you don't have, their own priority as a research, then it will be hard for you to win the particular grant. And apart from the novel idea, this particular research should address a significant problem, right? It may be a very novel idea, but let's say we are researching on how leopards behave in the Horton Plains and their effects on the general community. It is a novel idea. However, the attention given to these kind of research ideas are lacking, limited. And then you must have a clear description of the research activities that you do. Clear description of the research activities that you do. And a good fit with the funding agency's priorities. That is what I discussed earlier. Your research must be complying with the funding agency's priorities so that there will be a chance for your proposal to be selected. So these are the, factors that we can control. But there are factors that we can't control. What are those factors? The internal politics of a funding agency. You can't control. That should be solved by the funding agency. Right? And stiff competition with the other applicants. Definitely, most of the grants are competitive based. So if the competition is there and you have to fight with various different applicants from various different countries or within the university level or within the country level, there is a slight uncertainty for your research grant to be accepted because there is a huge competition for that particular grant. Right? And then factors affecting the other factor affecting is the limited availability of funds to carry out a certain project within a funding agency. Right? So if, as I told you earlier, as I explained regarding the National Science Foundation, how they are allocating funds for the research. So they have installments and they allocate each installment based on quarterly progress or something. But still, if the treasury has not given money to NSF, then there will be limited availability of funds. So that we can't control. So these things, the factors that we can't control, you must keep them in mind. Right? You must keep them in mind. What are the factors that we can control? The quality of our own proposal. That is a very big factor that we can control. When you say the quality of your own proposal, you need to start writing carefully, or you need to edit, re-edit, go through again and again to avoid mistakes. Right? So quality of our own proposal requires clear research and planning. How do you carefully plan the research? What are the management strategies that you are thinking of? What are the problem solving capacities that or alternatives that you are looking at? So all these things should be there in the proposal so that the quality of the proposal is high and requires detailed execution. So you are the you are the person who writes the proposal. So you know how to execute it. So you have to write it in a way to express it nicely with a detailed execution process. Then let's move into the writing part of the research proposal. Right? First most in my case is the cover letter. Right? That gives a huge attention by the funding agencies. So it's very important for you to write a thorough, nice cover letter when you start writing the research proposal. Title, of course, very important. And there is an executive summary, background and problem statement, aims and objective, rationale if you need to have it, methodology, plan of work, that means the time schedule, and then outcomes and potential possible outcomes, and then the reference list. So this is the sub-segments of the research proposal. So let's move on to cover letter. How to write the cover letter. Remember well, the cover letter is the perfect opportunity for you to capture the attention or the focus of your granting body. Right? You are trying to get the attention of an evaluator. Right? You are applying for a grant. You are trying to attract the evaluator. So that cover letter should be perfectly written. Right? So cover letter you can read in few seconds, and then you can get the idea about what you are focusing on, what the novelty is in this particular proposed research. But the evaluator might not be able to read the whole research proposal in terms of technical screening, right? So when you submit a research proposal to a granting body, it will undergo the technical screening first, right? And then only there will be send it to reviewers, right? And in the cover letter, you need to include the key objective of your research. That is very important, right? That is very important. The key objective of your research should be introduced in the cover letter. Right? Why? Because this particular granting body might be receiving thousands or hundreds of grant applications. So just by looking at those minute details like executive summary, the cover letter, and so on, they will decide whether they are going with this particular proposed research or not. What are the do's when you are writing the cover letter? Make sure that you are keeping it short, right? The cover letter should be kept short. Maximum 3 to 4 paragraphs. In my case, it is most of the time 3 paragraphs. The very first paragraphs, I will introduce the resources, the team of scientists, and what is this particular research is focusing on. The second paragraph, you will be describing how you are going to tackle this problem. And in the third paragraph, you can say, okay, we are very happy, and so on and so forth. In the cover letter, you must keep, or you must say what to need exactly, right? You must say what you need exactly in the cover letter, right? Because there can be some instances, there have been a project already going on, but there is a very urgent instrumentation which is very much needed, so that you are stating it in your cover letter, right? You should avoid repeating yourself, right? Especially you should not use the first person, like I do, we did, and so on. Right? So repeating yourself should be minimized. And then make a connection. So make a connection means you can make connections from you and your field site, or from you and the people that you are dealing with. All these things, you need to start collaborations. That is the take-home message. So what are the don'ts of the, or do not do in a cover letter? Right? get too emotional. Don't be emotional when you are writing the cover letter. Don't ask for, don't ask for apologies, right? All these things, those are not necessary. You can mention your competitors. If you have any competitors, then you can mention the competitors and let the granting body know what are the competitions that you have. And then more importantly, do not exaggerate. More importantly, do not exaggerate what you are thinking of getting, right? Exaggeration of expected outcomes is something that will be negative for your cover letter proposal. Then we are moving into title, right? We are moving to title. So since the time is 10, I will take 5 minutes break and then come. Please stay online. So it's only just 5 minutes. I will come soon. Okay. Okay. From now on, we will be moving and focusing our main attention to the sections of the proposal. So when it comes to the title, it's very important for you to write a nice, catchy title so that the evaluator's attention will be focused. Remember that the title is a mini abstract, right? Title is a mini abstract. it's kind of a GPS address for your research, right? For your location or whatever. So GPS address is given to find the location, right? So title is the same. Title is a address or something for the evaluator to understand what you are focusing on, right? So title is a mini abstract and it should be very clear. Should be very clear, right? Should be concise too. Clear and concise should be there in the title. And subject first. What you are focusing is to be in the first instance. Title should reflect the summary of your proposed research. I would say a proper title should have less than 20 words. The most nice titles would have like 15 to 20 words, right? 15 to 20 words. So it's not too long and not too short, right? Not too long and not too short. Less than 20 words, if I say less than 20 words, you might think, okay, I can write a title within, with 8 words. But then it is too short. It will not be, you will not be able to give the summary of your focus in that kind of 8 words. So that better to focus your title like 15 words. Not beyond 20 words for sure, right? Because too long technical titles will not gain reviewers' attention much. Especially if your title has a lot of jargon, then the reviewers will not feel good enough. Because if you are specifically putting some jargons, then most of the evaluators are not being in the same field of science that you are working on, so that they will not like it, right? So remember, these things should not be too long and too short, and should reflect the summary of your research. So you are writing a title to attract readers, right? Attract readers or attract your evaluators, right? So the title should be written as such. And there are various different title categories. We can quickly go through. Most common title is the declarative title. So declarative titles give an understanding or give a sense of the main finding or a conclusion in a paper. So yes, this is for a paper, similar to a proposal too, right? You are thinking about a finding when you write the proposal, so that should be given in the sense should be given in the title, in the sense of declarative title. And the other most common title type is descriptive title. This is very, very common, most common, much common than the declarative title. And this descriptive title, you have the article theme, but you are not exactly mentioning the finding or the conclusion. You are showing a sense, but not exactly giving the finding or the conclusion. So that you can clearly, see when you read many papers. So interrogative title, this is kind of a question type of title. So you are asking a question to restate it. So these interrogative titles are not that common, and specifically not very common in proposals too, though we are working on a research problem, but we are not, putting it as a question. Then executive summary, right? After the title, most of the time, the proposals should have an executive summary. Whatever I am telling as subsections here might not be in your proposal, because in most of the competitive proposals, competitive grant applications, they have their own format. Specifically, let's say as an example, NSF has their own format. NRC has a separate format. And University of Sri Jayewardenepura has a separate format for competitive grants, grant applications or proposal applications. So each and every subsection might not be there in the in your particular grant application. But most commonly, executive summary is important, and both NRC and NSF, they are asking for an executive summary. So moving into grant writing, so every winning grant has a good executive summary written in their very first part of the grant proposal. So executive summary may be called as a proposal summary too, right? So in this executive summary, it is a brief synopsis. It's like an abstract of the entire proposal. So you are looking at, what the problem is, and then how you're going to tackle it, what the time duration is, do you have the resources and the budget and everything. So these are being given briefly, not the numbers of in the budget, but you are giving a sense. So what are the do's when you are writing an executive summary is, keep up 2 pages long maximum. This is in general, this is the length given especially for international grants. But in the case of national grants in Sri Lanka, it's like 500 words maximum. So I would say like 1 page or half a page, right? Depending on the line spacing that you have. But in my opinion, I would go only for half a page. And you will provide just enough information that an evaluator read. Might be only this part they might be reading, because if they feel like, okay, this is not having a novel idea, then they will just reject your proposal. You might include the resources that you have, right? If you have some other funding source, then you can mention. Or if you have some good analytical resources, you can mention. And you can mention, about your organization, history, mission, and all these things, but that is not necessary, right? Not essential. What are the don'ts? Don't address the funder directly, right? Don't, write to the funder. You are writing to the funder by your cover letter, not from the executive summary. And don't give too much, right? Don't give too many details regarding the project, right? So it's just an abstract. So a good executive summary must have the mission and the history of what you are doing and what is it for, and the project title kind of, and who you are going to address this project from, what is the problem that should be given, and how you are going to solve it, So one, like 2, 3 sentences each. And then the end goal or the outcome of your project and how you're going to measure it. Measure the output of your project. What kind of measures that you are having. And why you should have funds. What are the competency of yours to get funding for this particular grant? And how much money you would need, and how are you going to manage the finances and the project time duration. So these things you can include in an executive summary. Then comes the introduction and justification, right? A very important section of your project proposal, right? Normally, it depends, as I told earlier, it depends on the application guidelines given. Otherwise, if there is no exact guideline given for writing the introduction and justification, I would write an introduction and justification for 2 pages maximum. 2 pages maximum. In this introduction and justification, including the literature part, right? 2 pages, including the literature part. Otherwise, if you are just writing the introduction and justification, then write only half a page. Write only half a page, right? So you are giving the brief introduction to your research based on the literature. So if you have the literature section in the introduction, then I would say 2 pages, right? So brief introduction is given based on the literature, right? And then you justify your research by stating the gaps in research, right? By stating the existing gaps in research. You are stating the existing gaps in research, right? So that you are able to justify your research, right? So whether your research is a continuation of what others have done, that is important to mention. If your research is a continuation of what others have done, then you must show what exactly the gap is, the existing gap. Or your research focuses on testing hypotheses of previous researches. Somebody has done that research and you are trying to test your hypothesis. And novel and unique research. If the research is very unique and novel, you can justify easily. But you need to mention what has been done, what has not been done, and that is the research gap that you are going to fulfill from your particular proposal. So when you write the introduction, start from the basics, right? Start from the basics. So it's like if you are writing a research proposal on water quality analysis of some particular location, that doesn't mean that you should start from the very basics, like water is this, and you have like 70% of the total land mass of the world is in water, and then out of that particular 1% is in groundwater and so on. Not those basics. The basics of the problem that you are going to introduce or you are going to solve, right? And you need to give details with evidences. There you need to cite the literature, definitely. And when you cite the literature, cite very recent literature, right? Then the evaluator would understand, okay, you have an idea about what has been done recent past, right? So what is known, you should give in detail with the literature. And how those are known. What are the most important findings that they had, right? So these you should mention. So introduction is the section that you have a chance to express the importance of your research. That is why it is very important, right? So that you always should give the gap in research. You always should point the gap in research, right? So I would say the introduction is the heart of your research proposal, right? Introduction is the heart of your research proposal. If it is not written nicely, then the proposal will not get good attention. But again, it is the longest section of your research proposal. It is the heart of your research proposal, but the longest section of your proposal too, right? So don't deviate much. You have to focus, you have to keep your focus on the objectives and the title of your research, right? And then always mention the existing gaps in the knowledge. So in my opinion, I would say I would write a background as the very first paragraph in the introduction. So in the background, you will discuss about the background of the study area. That means the study field, and discuss the preliminary data that you have. And you have to connect the preliminary data with the background information. And then if you have limited preliminary data, then you can, you can spend time on the innovation segment, right? Don't write unnecessary information which does not support your hypothesis or your objectives in the background section. Background should not exceed 1/3 of 1/2 of your proposal, right? Remember that. That means the core of your work. That means the introduction part. So you don't mention that any indication in the proposal to be feasible. No indication, like you have to show that you have the potential to carry out this proposal in the section of the background, the last part of the introduction. So background is, I would say, the very first paragraph, and then you are writing about what is in the literature, right? In the background section, the very first paragraph, you will not cite more than 5 literature. But in the literature review section, that means the second part of your introduction, you will have the literature review, right? It will not be just a summary of literature. It will not be just merely writing, okay, these people have found this data and this and that. It's not merely reporting the data, right? You need to clearly show these have been done and these results have been found out, but still there is this particular gap remaining. So compare and contrast is very important when you write the literature review section in the proposal, right? So only take the literature that supports your hypothesis, right? And extends the previous work, right? So the literature review section should be unique, and you should follow the previous work. So this is the narrative of a good literature review section. So I would say you are writing 1 paragraph of background, 1 paragraph of the literature review, right? But the literature review section is maybe like 1 page long. So it should go like a funnel. What reader knows and what reader doesn't know should be coming in as the funnel. So you introduce the field, you with a broad focus, and then certain aspect in the field with compare and contrast, and end up with the gap analysis. Right? Then finally, it comes to the purpose. So purpose is the third paragraph. Right? Funnel point is your purpose. So purpose is giving us the third paragraph. So where you are mentioning this is the research problem in your proposal. Right? So problem statement is the so what statement. So what? Right? When you have some idea in your mind, you must ask from yourself, so what? You are thinking of analyzing the water quality, let's say in Kalawaya. Right? Let's say in Kalawaya Basin. Kalawaya Basin. So what? What is the point? Why do you need to analyze water quality in Kalawaya Basin? What's the issue? That you should ask from yourself, so that you will write it as the justification in your proposal. Right? So problem statement is the blueprint of your literature review, and it will be the focus that you are gaining from the committee, and you will catch the attention of the evaluator from this funnel type until the end, showing the purpose of your proposed research. So problem statement is one of the most important part of your grant proposal, especially in the grant proposal structure. I don't think there is any grant application form where there is no problem statement. Each and every grant proposal should have the problem statement, right? We call it as need statement or statement of need as well. So you will be showing what is the importance of your particular research. So when you write the problem statement, use comparable data, right? You are showing what others have found and what is not there. Highlight the urgency, highlight saying why it is essential, and focus on the main problem. It's very important for you to focus on the main problem. Don't make it about you, or about your organization. So don't discuss about all these things, but mention that, you have the potential of doing it. And the circular reasoning, don't formulate the problem as, like a circular, like a circle, right? In some proposals, there is a research hypothesis to be filled out, and some proposals they don't have. So if there is the proposal hypothesis you have asked to write down, then you need to make very clear and testable hypothesis. Clear and testable hypothesis. If not, you will be in trouble, right? So clearly state the hypothesis or number of hypotheses that will be addressed by the proposal, right? Give a rationale why this particular hypothesis is important to be investigated, right? So always you need to give justification. Give justification. Why do you need to give justification is because you are asking questions by yourself, why you are doing this? What is the reason? What for? What is the need? If you ask from yourself, if you ask that from yourself, then you will easily write a focused research proposal, right? So rationale and hypothesis don't combine it together. If you have many hypotheses, then it will be hard for you to achieve the outcome, outputs of the project that you are thinking of. So don't put many hypotheses. Just one hypothesis would be enough. Then we are moving into the aim of your project. Some cases you have to write the aim of your research proposal, but in some cases you are not. It's just like hypothesis. So aim is like very broad outcome that you are planning to assess from your project, right? So we aim to investigate, or we aim to understand, or we aim to explore. So these words you need to mention. When you write the aim, you need to mention to map, to develop, to design, to track, to generate, to theorize, to build. Or sometimes you can write to investigate, to understand, to explore. So these words, these technical terms you can use when you write aim of your work or proposed research. So what are the good things, better ways of writing specific aims are address the innovation wherever possible. So aim should be target on what you are planning to find out, the solution. And justify by writing the methodology. Then you need to confirm the results with multiple approaches. So if you have only one approach to test your hypothesis or your aim, it's not good. So you need to either compare it with existing something, or you need to do a comparison between two. Right? You need to understand that, or you need to know that you should not make aims that are risky. If you can't achieve something, then don't write it as an aim, right? And you really need to include controls to test, right? Because the evaluator will think of how you are going to test whether you have achieved the aim of your project or not. Then specific aims. How do you reject? What are the bad writing styles of specific aims? Many specific aims are bad because depending on the time frame, you are not being able to achieve these things. So it's too ambitious, right? So if your specific aim is written in that manner, then it will negatively impact on the reviewer. So you should not write, like very limited stuff or very broad stuff. So always try to be specific. Then some authorities or some applications of grant proposals, they are asking the significance and impact, right? Significance and impact of your research, proposed research. This is also very important because by looking at the impact and the significance of your research, evaluator might think 2 times of giving you the research or not, giving you the grant or not. It is the last chance to impress you, the reviewer, on the importance of what you are proposing. Remember that, right? So that you need to give thoroughly, highlighting the importance of your research. What is the significant? What will be the findings that you find as significant? And what will be the impacts of those? So those things you need to mention very clearly. If you have no significant statement, or if you have not elaborated it in nicer manner in the introduction, last part of the introduction section, then you will not be received grants, right? Then you must develop research questions. Or research problem. I would say research problem rather than saying research question. But in some cases, they prefer to use research questions, because if you have 3 questions, if you list out 3 questions, you can easily develop 3 objectives from these 3 questions, right? So that is why some people, they would like to call it as research question. Research questions should be very clear and concise. Research questions should be very clear and concise. Should be feasible for you to achieve at the end of the grant period, right? If you exaggerate, or if you write a very general, diverse research question, then it will be very hard for you to achieve that question, right? So based on the research questions, you will decide on the methodology, right? That is why it is very important, right? It should be feasible, should be clear and concise, and it should be driven by the research methodology. So project research questions or objectives, like you can write it as bullet lists, right? Research questions and objectives both. You can write them as bullet points. And these research questions should be action oriented, right? The research question should be action oriented. That is why from the research question itself, you can develop your objectives, right? Relate to identified needs. So you have already written the justification, or you have already found out the gap of the research field, so that you are trying to solve the gap by identifying the needs, identifying the action oriented questions, right? In most of the cases, especially with regard to Sri Lanka, the government research organization, they are trying to carry out the nationally important research. So you need to think about, from your own field, how to gather nationally important work as a research, right? Then we do write the objectives, right? Then we do write the objectives. Objectives is the action-oriented part of the research problem or research question, right? So research methodology also basically depend on the research question objective, right? Depending on the objectives, you are writing the methodology, right? Objectives should be specific, very important, very, very important. Should be very specific, should be practical, should be measurable, right? Those 3 things are very important for you to understand. Objectives should be specific and practical, that we can do some experimentation or field visits or something and achieve it. And then there should be a measure to understand whether you have done a good job. How do you understand that? By measuring the output of your research. So what are the outputs of your research? Can be a journal paper, an abstract, or patent, or something like that. Right? So objectives you can write as basic objective and specific objectives, or objective and specific objectives, and so on. Don't write more than 3 objectives because it is very hard for you to achieve. So don't write more than 3 objectives. So what are the differences between the aim and the objective? The aim is what you hope to do. It is broad. Right? Overall intentions of the project. Overall intention of the project. Right? And the objectives is not usually more than 1 in one particular objective, and it is very specific, not broad at all. And the aim signals where you aspire to be at the end. Right? It signals. But in the objectives, you clearly mention how you are going to achieve it. So it is the aim is the point of doing research. After the gap analysis, you are coming to the aim. So after the gap analysis, you are aiming to carry out this research. But the objectives is the acting part, right? Acting part. So aim is generally broad, objectives are to the purpose precise. Aim is ambitious, but not beyond the possibility. Aim is ambitious, but not beyond the possibility. But objectives should be achievable practically. So when you write the objective, you can write like, to produce, to measure, document, and many more, right? Objectives are mainly expressed through active sentences. So you start from active sentences. You don't write passive sentences for objectives. So goals and objectives of research, usually one paragraph or bulleted sections, right? And the goals and objectives of a research provides the opportunity to gain the researcher's interest and excitement in the proposal. So it provides the opportunity to gain the researcher interest of the researcher, and to excitement of the project proposal. Then it should state the innovation of the proposal clearly. And if your aim or objective will fail if you have these things done. If you don't have no goal, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have an objective, then that is the end of the proposal. If it is too technical and condensed, if a local undergraduate cannot stand this, like they can't stand on this, then it will be very hard. And too short, as I told you earlier, too short sentences or paras will not be sufficient. And then it should not be too long as well. Then how to state the goals and objectives? Like a lot of proposals fail because they have forgot to mishandle the hard work that is being done, right? So proposals, if you are doing a proposal, you must have a thorough knowledge about what are the methodologies that have been used in the previous past. So, right? So what are the do's in when you do when you write the objectives? State the objective as outcomes. An objective is something that you need to achieve. So if you are writing 3 objectives, then you need to write 3 statements, where you put the achievements, right? So when you write the objectives, you should be very smart, specific, measurable, attainable, and realistic. So those are the those are the background for you to write the objectives. Keep in mind, it should always be measurable. It should always be practical and always be specific. So don't be too ambitious. So sometimes people use too ambitious words and conclusions even in the introduction of your proposal, saying that this will, have these things, but it is impossible because you haven't used any preliminary data. And mistake goes for processes. So deadlines should be clearly matched. Deadlines should be clearly matched. Then it comes to plagiarism. So I will discuss plagiarism and beyond by tomorrow. So if you have any questions, you can raise your voice now and ask. Don't type in the chat box. It's hard for me to go through when you type more and more. So you can raise your questions so that I can answer. You don't have any question? Someone has asked about can't we persuade funding agency regarding urgency and importance of research? Yeah, you can. You can persuade. You can show them. You can meet them and really, if you can't unmute this, then just type the question in the chat box. I think now Banduni, Professor Banduni can raise the questions. I think now she's the co-host.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rosmetika. Now you can type your question, or otherwise you can raise your hand, and you can shoot your questions to the resource person, Rosmetika.
So, so there's a question on can't we persuade funding agency? Yes, you can persuade the funding agency, but you need to discuss with them. Because if the funding agencies already have taken a decision on, these are the priority areas, then you can't persuade by writing the proposal. But if they don't have something like that, then you can definitely persuade by your proposal. Someone is asking, are there any local funding for part-time PhD in the private sector? I'm not aware of this kind of local funding for part-time, but there were previously funding for PhDs and masters, MPhils from NSF and NRC. I'm not sure whether those are available right now with the economic condition. Is there any possibility of getting grant for an ongoing PhD research study? Yes, there are possibilities. If you have a part of your PhD study which is novel and which needs funding, then you can write to the funding agencies, NRC, NSF, and get some support from them. If not, like if that particular section of your PhD project has a good novelty, you can definitely write a funding proposal from that. Is it possible to share notes? The presentation, I really want that, everybody needs the presentation slides. These are very common. Common things even in the internet you can find. If you really want, I can share the presentation files. I can give it to the organizers, and they can consider whether they need to send it to the participants or not.
Excuse me, madam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the valuable presentation. Madam, my question is, you mentioned that the literature review should be under the introduction section. Can't we write a separate section? Because the literature review, we have to focus only the research gap and the past to identify the gaps of the research, or we have to consider what are that methodology, those that previous research focus like that.
Yeah.
And do we require a methodology for separate section?
Yes, depending on the grant proposal application structure, you can think of writing a separate literature review. As an example, in NSF, National Science Foundation grant application call, they have a separate section for literature review. So if that's so, you can write a separate section for literature review. But if there is no that kind of a strategy, structure, then you can write the literature review in the introduction part. There is no issue, no harm. You don't need to mention regarding the methodology in the literature review section. No point. You are just, focusing on the gap analysis in the literature review section. You really need the methodology part in the separately in the project proposal, grant proposal, that we can discuss tomorrow. A separate methodology section is essential, because by looking at the methodology section, the reviewers would understand whether the grant is writing validated methodology, or this project is based on the validated methodology, or the project is building up a methodology to be validated. So these things to be clear out. So that is why a separate methodology section is very important. Thank you for asking. And then when we are executing detailed proposal, should we think about intellectual property rights? Because we are giving away our important ideas. Exactly, yes. This is one big issue that I see in Sri Lankan, grant calls. Most of the time, your research ideas are being stolen. So that I'm not sure how to eliminate, because it is ethics. So if the researchers, the evaluators don't have the ethics, then it is very hard. But this happens, even this has happened to me. Many researchers are there, this particular problem has happened. What I do normally is, I try to start the project a little earlier than the grant call, if possible. Otherwise, it will be very hard. But this happens. This is very common in Sri Lanka. Could you please mention few international granting bodies? Yes, there are international granting bodies. One is the International Foundation for Science, IFS. It is not Sri Lankan IFS. International Foundation for Science. This is in Sweden. So they have grant calls, especially for young scientists who are less than 40 years of age. And there are two, you can, if you win one grant, even you can win another grant, maximum 2 you can go. And one is the World Academy of Sciences, TWAS. They have various different grant calls. And one for women, the Organization for Women Scientists in Developing Countries, OWST. And IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. So there are many more, right? So those are very few. Is there any possibility getting grant for an ongoing PhD research study? We discussed about that. Can't we have literature review section, different chapter? This was discussed. If we don't get results as expected according to the proposal, but results we got are really good in another way, yeah, definitely you can justify. That doesn't, that is no harm, because in any way you are hypothesizing first. So the hypothesis can fail. That is no issue. But you have to mention it clearly that the hypothesis failed and we got these results. These results were not very as expected, but these are the results that we have received, and these are very novel and highlighted. All these things you can mention. Budget we'll discuss tomorrow. And if we do a quantitative analysis of a previous research by qualitative analysis, how can I address the introduction section? I'm not very clear about this question. If I do a quantitative analysis for a previous research by qualitative analysis, that I don't really understand that question. Could you please repeat the international granting bodies, I guess. IFS, the International Foundation for Science, Sweden, the World Academy of Sciences, and the International Agency, like International Atomic Energy Agency, and the Foundation for Women Scientists, OWS, Organization for Women Scientists in Developing Countries. Those are the most known granting bodies that I have been involved in. Okay, maybe we can wind up then and start tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Metika, for your very valuable and very comprehensive and very informative session. And shall we meet on tomorrow at the same time, 9 a.m. And you can keep your questions with you, because tomorrow you can discuss those questions also regarding scientific writing with the proposal writing. And you can meet Professor Metika again in some other lecture also. And however, please make sure you have specific questions, because sometimes you may, when you are writing your proposals, you may have several questions. So please ask those questions on tomorrow at the end of the session. And same time, there's an announcement. You can find out those lectures in the IESL YouTube channel, and please go through and get it down. Okay. Once again, thank you so much for you all for the participation, and also that it's very nice to see that your interest regarding the scientific writing, especially the engineers, that they are really because they are really showed very high interest on this type of webinars. And thank you very much once again. So see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you.